growth versus fixed mindset. Number one, that's the dichotomy that you're dealing with. And it's less of a dichotomy. People find themselves within the dichotomy, but it's obviously a spectrum. And growth mindset being the belief that one is able to improve on their current abilities. No ability is necessarily innate in the sense that it can't be improved upon. Mm-hmm. And fixed mindset being, we are the way that we are, nothing can change us. We live in a deterministic world to the utmost degree, and nothing that we do can interfere with that. So if you're bad at math, then you're bad at math. If you can't read, you can't read. If you don't have a green thumb, you're never going to get that garden going. So those are that's the way that I see growth mindset. And it's interesting because the literature by Carol Dweck is so new, but I've been exposed to it for so long because of being in athletics that I just thought it was totally common knowledge. And it differs from the personality traits within like conscientiousness and grit. Growth mindset is something a little bit outside of those. And I would say that maybe they have an interplay relationship between them, where the grittier you are, potentially the higher your growth mindset belief is. But I also believe that there's to stack those two on top of each other, to be in a growth mindset while also being gritty or conscientious, then that has exponential returns. Because if you believe that you can get good at something and you're already good at working towards something, then you're gonna get so good at something so fast it's gonna make your head spin. Mm-hmm. So I found that it's just a way of thinking too, right? It's not something that's I heard this a while ago, but it was I forget which I think it was Alexander the Great maybe, but he could read without speaking, without mouthing the words. He could just read in his head, and people thought that was magic. And it's things like those, it's just once you understand that something is possible, then it changes your whole perspective of reality. And I had a friend that read Mindset by Carol Dweck. I think it's called Mindset.
I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah. She had read Mindset, and it totally changed her perspective on everything. Mm-hmm. Absolutely changed everything. And I really like the mechanics of neuroscience and neurobiology and neurochemistry. So this is a much more of a practical approach towards the mindset idea. It doesn't talk about what's happening in your brain, but it talks about the behaviors that you display and how that impacts the returns on your learning. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's unbelievably cool, unbelievably interesting. And the fact that just telling people that you can get better at something completely changes their perspective and the way that they look at the world.
Absolutely. You can get better at something, and as well, failure is an opportunity for learning. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the trickiest things for us as human beings, one of our biggest flaws as human beings, is that a phrase that I hear all the time, and it's been known to come out of my mouth too, is, "Oh, I'm not very good at that, so I'm not going to try." Mm-hmm. Which is just so boring. That's such a boring approach to life. Like refusing to engage in a new experience just because you think you have an idea that you're going to be bad at it and you don't want to embarrass yourself. Mm-hmm. Is so boring, and it limits yourself so much. So an opportunity to learn from failure, and instead of kind of like blacking it out or blacking out something that you failed at or you just didn't perform as well as you want, limits you from learning so much. Because I think while you do learn from a win or from a success, you don't learn as much. Mm-hmm. So that learning from failure, I think, is a really interesting component of that growth mindset too.
Mm-hmm. Well, failure turns out to be the only way that we actually do learn how to do anything. We have to learn, and then we have to fail, sorry. And as you fail, you get better and better at approximating the behavior that you're looking for. So I'm trained. I have 5 dogs, and I'm training them all to do very random things. And so I'm teaching them how to roll over and sit down, and they were very poorly behaved dogs. So they're all learning how to sit down and lay down and roll over, play dead, jump through my arms like a circus dog, and all those things. And the way that I do that is just from a strictly behaviorist perspective. I just go straight back to Skinner, and because that's the the most base layer you can get for learning is the behaviorist perspective. And I know that they maybe set us back about 40 or 50 years on what psychology could have been, but
he did it with dogs, so I think
yeah,
it's a great base to start from.
yeah. And what Skinner found was that you could train a rat to do an unbelievably complex system of actions just by waiting until they did something that was closer to what you wanted them to do, and then positively reinforcing them for that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So with the dogs, I'm actually training my oldest dog. I didn't want to train him because I love him so much and he loves food, and so I always felt bad not giving him food right away. And he's deaf and blind, and so I can't give him any actions or sounds, and so all I do is I'd sit there so he has a little room that he eats in, so that none of the other dogs, because he gets really good food because he has heart issues. Mm-hmm. And so we have him on a keto diet. Mm-hmm. And I sit down on a little dog bed, mm-hmm. and I wait for him to come and sit with me, and then now I'm waiting for him to lay down. So now he lays down, and now I'm going to get him to roll over, and I'm trying to do all of it from just behaviorism. There's no action by me. There's no relationship between us besides me sitting there. And so the first time that I did it, I sat in a room for about 30 to 45 minutes waiting for him to come and lay down, and then I gave him food, and then I just continued that process. But over time, it's so interesting to watch because he fails. Anything that he does outside of the behavior that I'm trying to get him to do is failure. Mm-hmm. And then as he gets closer to doing that behavior, he's approximating success. So the closer he approximates success, then the closer he gets to positive reinforcement. So in that same way, anything that we do outside of the successful behavior is failure. And so we're failing all the time, and we're successful a very small portion of the time. And it's interesting because once you actually succeed at something, then there's immediately another step. So in terms of grit, you're gritty up until you achieve your goal. And once you've achieved your goal, then there's a whole other goal that you have to be gritty towards. Mm-hmm.